week. I know a lot's going on and we're going, hi, Kathy. Nice to see you. I'm like, somebody I know. Yay.
Everybody, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Nice. I'm so
Sorry about
glad.
that. I couldn't find my audio there. I found it now.
Yay. Welcome, everybody. We're just giving it another minute. Hey, thanks for being here. Awesome.
Amy, I'm wondering while we give it a minute here as folks are trickling in, if anybody wants to put in the chat or kind of share out aloud where you're coming from and kind of what's your role there, right? Like what's the organization and what do you do?
Excellent.
I
That's
know
great.
we're coming from all across Central Mass, all different organizations. I'd love to see who's in the room with us today.
I can break the
Nice.
ice.
Oh yeah,
Great.
tell us. Thank you. We'd love to hear from you.
Good
Oh,
afternoon,
icebreaker.
everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's doing good. My name is Nathaniel Lopez, and I am the sophomore junior advisor of the organization I'm representing, which is Dynamy John S. Law's Youth Academy. Essentially, in a nutshell, we just serve Worcester Public Schools scholars from 9th to 12th grade from low-income first-generation backgrounds. And we support them through college readiness workshops, through class meetings, individually working with each cohort, community meetings, the intersectionality of all 4 grades under one roof, learning the same workshops and coaching and mentoring. And we have an advising piece as well, where each advisor meets their cohort individually for kind of like a one-on-one to meet them where they're at and to support them the best way that they can.
Love it. Thank you. That's great. It's so great. I see some more people I know, Teresa and Grace and Kwame. Awesome to see you guys here. Thank you so much for being here. We don't need to you did the best introduction ever and you set the bar really high. So I don't know if we want to do all that. Echo, I don't know if you want to say anything about the United Way and that you're sponsoring us and any of that stuff you want to talk about would be beautiful.
Great. So thank you for attending today. We are recording this program. So if you are attending on behalf of your staff, I can get you the link and you can pass that along. Our hope with this is that through the after school and out of school time grant that we were provided through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, our hope is that then we can support professional development that helps your organization truly thrive as they're working with youth this summer. And one way we thought we would do that this year is through a virtual menu with Amy and Kelsey and the Worcester Acts team. And so they will really get into the content and what that could look like for either you as a provider or your staff and your agency. So we're happy to support this. It's kind of a different model than we've done in the past, but we're glad that the 3 United Ways. I see Kristen McCarthy is here from the United Way of South Central, the United Way of Central Mass, and the United Way of North Central have the ability to truly support the providers. And feel free to give me any feedback of this opportunity if you have any opinions or thoughts as well. So thanks again for joining.
Thanks so much, Echo. We're really grateful to do it. So I can see that we pitch this training as if you don't have any background or experience in working with kids or youth, and I know some of you do. So hopefully it'll still have lots of good information, and our goal is to really make this useful. So feel free to, we got a lot of content, but you can jump on in, ask about anything. We also have a slide at the end where we'll talk about the Trauma Training Tuesdays that we've been doing, which is what really prompted Echo to reach out to us. We've been doing for more than 5 years now, deep dives on specific mental health and trauma related topics. And those are all recorded Each one has its own landing page and more information. So we're hoping the vision is sort of, this is going to be the level setting background. So everybody's kind of has the same language, is thinking about work with youth in the same sort of ways. Then we have this huge library to offer you of specialized topics. And then we are going to do 2 open office hour sessions, sort of like an Ask the Social Workers thing. So if something comes up in the program and you're really not sure what to do or how to address it, our hope is that we can help talk you through that. So again, that's our goal, is to be helpful and set you guys up to have the best summer with the kids. I haven't already introduced myself yet. I am Amy Ebbison. I'm a licensed clinical social worker who has been working in Worcester for like 30 years now, which is, part of why I know many of the people that are here. And I'm joined by my beautiful colleague, Kelsey Hopkins. Kelsey, do you want to say anything about?
Yeah, I'll jump in. We're so excited to be here, of course. Like Amy said, we're from Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma. And we're hoping to bring some educational background along with some tangible tools and strategies, so that you can really get the most out of this session. If you, like she said, if you have any questions, don't feel free to jump in. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout, so you can definitely ask questions there or raise your hand, pop off mute and ask as well. Yeah, we're gonna have a nice time today.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kels. And
Yeah.
we titled this Understanding Mental Health and Community because we're just so grateful that people that are working in the community are going to play a role in the kids' lives, in the kids sort of being as happy and healthy as they can. We know that there's a big shortage of social workers and mental health professionals, and many of the youth you're working with could really benefit from therapy, but they're not going to be getting it because of the access and all those reasons. So the more we can create therapeutic environments for kids, the better. And I just put this little picture here because it's a good tone setter. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And we know that working with kids, kids can feel it if you care and you're invested and you're interested in them. They know that. And that's so valuable and important. Our goals for today are to understand how important childhood experiences are for your mental health, for your adult mental health, as well as your mental health as a kid. Understand trauma's role in mental health. Trauma is like an injury, right? If we were talking about physical health, it's an injury you get. And if you treat it and everything's fine, you'll heal and go on and things will be back to normal. But when we ignore trauma, which is what we most often do, it can lead to longer term consequences and problems, just like an unaddressed injury would. So we want to make sure that we can recognize that trauma is the root cause for a lot of distress throughout our lives, and use this information to respond with more empathy and understanding for ourselves and for others. We were all children too, and many of us were children that had some traumatic things happen that went unaddressed. And here we are in our adulthood unpacking it, trying to figure out and fix it. So this is the best prevention work we can do. If we're helping kids while they're kids, we're setting them up for a happier and healthier adulthood. We're hoping that we're going to build skills and relationships in pursuit of our best community. It benefits all of our communities when people understand this, care about this, and can support kids in the environments that they're actually in. Best case scenario. We got a little warm up here, and I have some things, and it's a raise your hand if this applies to you. And so because I don't know if you can see how many people you can see. I can only see a couple people. So you could either physically raise your hand, or you could do on the reaction. If you can see the reaction button, there's a little electronic hand you could raise. And all we're going to do is just go through the things and notice if it's something that applies to you and applies to everybody else. And we'll talk about it when we're done. So the first one is raise your hand if you have any addiction in your family. Thank you. You can put your hands down. Raise your hand if you have gone through a personal crisis. Many of us. Raise your hand if you've ever lost control of your emotions. All right. The next one. Raise your hand if you ever felt different for any reason. Sorry, the pace is a little tricky, the ups and downs, but I think we're getting the groove. Thank you. Raise your hand if you tried to help somebody you thought was in danger. Yeah, most of us. 8 raised hands. Oh yeah, nice, nice. The next one. Raise your hand if you know somebody who died by suicide. Also many, many raised hands. That's almost all of us. Raise your hand if you have been helped by somebody. Yay. I'm going to stop the screen share then and kind of hear your thoughts on that. What do you guys think about the kind of heavy, intense things I just asked you? And what do you make of how many people those apply to? Feel free to just unmute and jump in.
I
Did
think
anything-
it's pretty normal, Amy. I feel like everybody has gone through, life is not perfect for anybody, right? So we've all had our good times and our bad times. It's just how we make it through. And having a support system definitely helps. So
Yeah. And I love what you said. Like, this applies to us. This applies to all of us. Most of us, I don't think there was anybody that didn't have at least their hand raised for one of those things. And all of them are, potentially traumatic experiences that can really leave a mark.
and
Other
sometimes it's not even your own trauma. Sometimes it's trauma of you helping someone through their own trauma could be traumatic.
vicarious and secondary trauma are real.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Doing this work in this point of time, there's so much going on that's really terrifying for kids. And they look to adults to sort of know if it's okay or not. So it's absolutely really important. Grace, I love your comment. It's a good reminder to be compassionate. Absolutely part of what we're hoping. The sort of the most intense one about dying by suicide, right? Most of us know somebody who died by suicide, right? We still kind of live in this world where we act like mental health is just fluff. It's not a big deal. It's not really important. It's not like physical health. Yet suicide can be the result of really problematic, like your mental health can lead to your death. This is not fluff. This is serious. This is important stuff. And that's why we kind of bring that to the surface, just to recognize how much this really can be life or death for kids that are struggling. Any other thoughts or comments? Kels? Anybody else?
I always like the good reminder that we're not alone, right? Like Kathy said, life isn't perfect, right? We do the ups and downs. And so the sometimes our society and our work and our lives would make us feel like we're isolated and we're separate, but this activity always just brings me back to that. We're not alone in carrying heavy things. And sometimes all we have to do is kind of look to a neighbor and we can assume that they're also carrying some heavy stuff, even when we can't see it.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna go back onto my screen share, I think. The reason that this is that it is intense to do this little activity is stigma. If you've ever been to one of my trainings, you've seen this before because I trot this cartoon out all the time because it really helps me recognize that what we just talked about, how differently we respond to physical health and mental health. And this cartoon is the exact same picture in the top frame and the bottom frame. In the top frame, it's labeled physical illness. And this dude says, I feel like I'm dying. And the helper says, we need to get you to the hospital as soon as possible. The next frame, it's labeled mental illness. The dude says, I feel like I'm dying. And the helper says, just try and remember, a lot of people have it a lot worse. Right? Have you heard those kinds of messages about mental health? I see a lot of head shaking. Those are the messages we get about mental health. Like, just suck it up, buttercup. It's not a big deal. It could be worse. Look on the bright side, which, those things can be true, but that's also very minimizing and invalidating when people feel like they're dying, right? The definition of stigma is a mark of disgrace or infamy, a stain or reproach as on one's reputation. If you know that, you're going to be really cautious about sharing any struggles you have. Even as a social worker doing this work, I'm very aware that when I share about my own struggles or challenges, that people are going to judge me about that, right? And I don't want to be judged. I don't like being judged. And that is what keeps so many people and their families from seeking help. We have a lot of good help in the realm of mental health and mental illness, but lots of people never even make it there because they're ashamed or embarrassed to talk about needing help. We want that to end. Many people would rather tell their employer they served time in jail than admit to being in a psychiatric hospital. That should be shocking, but it's not, right? I'm that statistic always really resonates with me because I know it's true, but it's just dramatic, right? Like the assumptions we make about you because you've been to jail are less harmful than the assumptions we're going to make about you if you've been hospitalized for your mental health. We would never judge you if your appendix burst and you were hospitalized. We would not make some judgments about your character because of your appendix bursting. Yet we know that that happens with mental health, and that's really the problem here. We also know that because of stigma, it can be triggering to talk about this stuff. It brings up those feelings of shame or worry or fear of judgment. And we're just putting that out there to begin with, because we know that this stuff can be hard. And sometimes because of the way things are with mental health and mental illness, you might not even realize the ways in which you personally have been impacted by trauma and harm that was done in your childhood or in your adulthood. Another really important piece, and I know many of the people in this audience, this is not new for at all, but identity matters, right? And what we mean by identity, we're talking about the groups you belong to, your racial identity, your gender identity, nationality, ability, disability, sexuality, sexual orientation, all of the many things that make up our identity are afforded different amounts of power, right? This is kind of one of the big cultural gaslights in the US. We like everyone's the same, it doesn't matter, we're all treated equally. But we know that that's really not the case. The identity groups you belong to are going to impact stigma, the stress levels, and the choices you have available. Your identity is going to impact your personal experiences in your childhood. Cultural beliefs about families and mental health come from our identity groups. And the big issue is groups are not afforded equal power. With every identity group, I'm confident you could tell me which group has power and which group has less power. We know when it comes to race, if you're white, you're in the power group. If you're a person of color, you're impacted by racism. Racism, sexism, heterosexism, and all forms of oppression are going to impact how you're interacting with your peers and how kids are interacting with you. They're very aware that as an adult, you have power over them, right? You also might have positional power at your site. And those things matter. Those things play out in your interactions. The people with more power usually come out successful in an interaction, and people with less power may not get their needs met. So being sensitive and tuned into that can really help you be responsive and recognize what's going on for the kids you serve. I'm just going to kind of keep going. And Kelsey, I know you're on chat duty and you'll just hop in if there's something to talk about right away, because I can't see it.
Absolutely. I've got nothing in the chat related to the topic besides the REC team made a switch. So Zoe's on now.
All right.
But yep.
So now to sort of come to the definition of trauma and what we're talking about when we say trauma. Psychological trauma is an occurrence which is outside the scope of everyday human experience and which would be notably distressing to almost anyone. And that's been the definition in the DSM that the American Psychiatric Association puts out since 1987. Solid definition, makes sense. It is not the event itself that determines whether something is traumatic, it's the individual's experience of the event. So many individual factors come into play. If Kelsey and I go through the same experience, it might be traumatic for her and not traumatic for me because of my background and experience. So it's important to know that we just don't want to make assumptions. It can be a single occurrence, a fire, a theft, an assault, or a lot of times, more commonly, it is chronic and repetitive experiences, things that keep on happening to people. I noticed plenty of people raise their hand for addiction in their family. If you grew up with an alcoholic or addiction in your family, it's very likely that that has had some impact. With the kids that you're seeing, it's likely that kids are going through routine abuse or addiction or anything like that in their family. Trauma engages your fight, flight, freeze, stress response. It engages the physical stress response. I know when I'm like, something's happening, I experience it like my blood boiling. Like I can feel my temperature rising when I feel like, oh my gosh, a conflict is going to come on, or like somebody just said something that I'm going to have to challenge. And I can feel those physical symptoms. A lot of times, those physical symptoms are coming up to sort of keep you protected. The traumatic experience causes the body and mind to be overwhelmed and results in what we call dysregulation. We said it in the beginning, difficulty keeping your emotions in check, losing control of your feelings because of the situation. I'm not going to show this clip because of limited time. I'll let you watch it. But if you haven't seen it, this is the Nadine Burke-Harris TED Talk on how childhood trauma impacts health across a lifetime. It's a great TED Talk if you haven't seen it. And you'll get the slide deck and the recording, so you can go back and check it out if you want to. It's really useful. Also, whoops, trauma is common. According to the CDC, over half of Americans have suffered at least one traumatic event. 1 in 5 was sexually molested as a child. 1 in 4 was beaten by a parent to a point of a mark being left on the body. Experiencing poverty and experiencing racism was added just in 2019 as another ACE. And if you don't know about the ACE study, I'm guessing most of you have heard of the ACE study, but ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And this chart here is like right out of that study. What they did was they give you like 1 point for all of these bad things that might have happened before age 18. So if you were physically abused and neglected, and your parent, you had a parent with a mental illness, you would have 3 things, right? Many people have many more than that. You can see if you experience physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse, a point for each one of those. If you experience physical neglect or emotional neglect, if your household had an incarcerated relative, a caretaker with mental illness, substance abuse in the home, a single parent household, and if you saw your mother treated violently, that was another one that really impacted people. And this study was done by Kaiser Permanente, who's a big health insurance provider, and they asked everybody that they insure about these experiences. And they had access to all these health records. It's a huge health insurance company. And what they found was that what your ACE score correlated with your death, your like when you died. People with higher ACE scores were experiencing earlier death. They experienced more physical problems across the board. So to me, that study is like the end all be all of physical health and mental health are the same. You don't get to just pay attention to one and not the other. They absolutely are impacting each other. This chart is again right out of the ACE study. The ways that trauma impacts you there's a lot of ways trauma impacts you. It impairs your memory, your concentration, your new learning, and focus, right? So if we're thinking about kids, and I remember, in 2020, we're like, oh, the kids aren't learning. Well, big surprise. When you have all this stuff going on, it's really hard to take in new information and learn new skills. Trauma is absolutely going to impact your ability to learn. As I was saying before with the ACE study, trauma has been correlated to all of these health outcomes: heart disease, obesity, addiction, pulmonary illness, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, and cancer. All of these things are more likely to take you out early when you've had a lot of trauma. This one is really important for you guys that are working with kids in the community. Trauma impacts an individual's ability to trust, to cope, and to form healthy relationships. Trauma disrupts your ability to identify your own feelings, your ability to calm yourself down, and your ability to control your emotions in a way that feels good to you. It also disrupts people's abilities to distinguish between a safe and an unsafe environment or situation. That's one of the ones that it took me a long time to really get this and understand this. But when people have lived in situations that aren't safe, they can't tell the difference between safe and unsafe. They've never even known safe. And so it's kind of a big source of meaning when you recognize, you say to a kid, didn't you know that was a bad situation? No, they didn't. They really didn't. They don't understand that because they've never even been safe. This one to me is one of the more damaging things that trauma does. Trauma shapes your belief about yourself and other people, your ability to have hope and your outlook on life. Many people that have experienced childhood trauma have a hard time imagining a future for themselves. They don't even believe they're going to be make it to adulthood. And I see head shaking. I know that this is some of the kids that we work with. This has been their experience. This to me was so super helpful to understand. I'm like in my 50s, and when I went to college in the 90s, we didn't really have the technology we have now to see what's going on in your brain. And when I was taking psychology classes, they would show us pictures of brains that they had sliced and put dye in, and like that's how they were understanding brains. Kind of macabre, also cool and interesting, but not really good at showing us a living brain. So it's only been since the 90s that we've had some of this technology to see inside your brain and how it's working and how it's creating itself. And it's really interesting. The brain is what we call a use dependent organ. And what that means is your brain comes on board, and then your brain like looks out in the world and figures out, what do I need to know? So even if you are a Chinese baby and we put you in an English speaking family, you're going to learn to speak English. That's what you need to know, right? And so every single thing that's happening to you is creating your brain structure. Your brain structure gets created like a highway system, really, right? So if you think like this first picture is like a path through the woods. If I cut through the woods all the time, there's going to be a little path through the woods. Same as your brain. If an experience happens once, there's going to be a path there. Each experience is shaping the architecture of your brain. The more it happens, the better traveled the path is. So if something happens all the time, that's going to be like a paved road. If we add emotion, any kind of emotion, it supercharges that connection. That connection is even more powerful. So it becomes like a super highway in your brain. So if you're thinking about your brain's highway structure is based on what you had to learn and what you had to know how to do as a kid. Your brain is built perfectly to survive your childhood. The more an experience happens, the better traveled the path is. Very mad and sad kids become mad and sad adults. This is the time. That's why this work that you're doing is so important. Brains are being built, right? Especially in early childhood, but all the way into your early 20s. If kids are abused in their home, abuse can feel normal and expected. It's the road they know. This also helps me think about this because when so often, we're working with people, we're teaching them new skills, deep breathing, ways to cope. But then when something bad happens, all that goes out the window. Kind of makes sense. If my brain is this road network, when something bad happens, I'm not taking the scenic route, I'm going to take the highway, right? So we're going to default to what we've always done and what we've always known. So in crisis, we're going to get on that highway. But when we think about the brain in this way, helping kids develop Calm Street and Happy Avenue is really, really beneficial. Moving from sorrow lane and anxiety highway to Happy Street and Calm Avenue is what we want for our kids. Trauma affects behavior. This story I took from Stephen Covey. He's not a mental health guy. He's like a success guru guy. You may have heard of him. But I thought this story was such a good illustration of this concept. He's on the subway. This man gets in with his two sons, and these kids are running all over the subway car, like bothering people, like kind of getting in their stuff, getting in their space. He makes eye contact with somebody else on the subway. They're annoyed too. But then Stephen gets annoyed enough. He asks the father, "Why don't you do something to control your kids?" The father replies, "We just got back from the hospital where their mother died. I don't know how to handle it, and I guess they don't either." Did your opinion change when you got that new information? Unless you're a sociopath, you would be impacted by hearing that, right? You would be like, yeah, I get these bratty, annoying kids. But then you find out why they're being bratty and annoying and moves you to empathy, right? And I love this story because it's such a reminder for me. Like, if a kid is having behavior that's really pushing my buttons, there's usually a reason. There's usually a why. And the why is usually leads me to these kids are doing the best they can with the things that have happened to them. They've had so much big stuff happen um, that their capacity is stretched. They're not able to manage it all. Um, Also, I put this iceberg theory slide in here for you to really know that you're right, right? Like, to trust your own instincts. Anybody, what's the idea? What's the deal with icebergs? Anybody jump in? Excuse my Seinfeld channeling. What's the deal with icebergs?
Well, icebergs is like at the very top is just what is seen for like surface level. However, we don't know there's a huge block of ice below that surface level. So we only get to see one surface level perspective and not the whole scope of things.
Oh my God, that was the best definition I've ever heard. That was beautiful. Such an overachiever. But exactly, you can only, what you see at the top is only a little percentage of the whole volume of the iceberg. So that is the same with people and kids. What they're showing is usually just the tip of the iceberg. There is much more underneath. If you see cause for alarm, you are almost certainly right, right? And so this 10% might be a comment that sounds suicidal, a behavior that makes you think they might be using substances. If you see anything like that, you're right. You're right. So this slide is here so that you know to trust yourself, because we work really hard to keep things that we know we're going to get judged for, that we know other people might, we work to keep that under wraps. And if it's popping up, it's legitimate. It's there. So remember that when you're like, I'm not sure if this is happening or not. Yeah, you're probably right. Us and the kids we're working with have experienced generational trauma. This stuff happened. We now know, and like, this is a whole other thing, and there is a Trauma Training Tuesday on it, but we're learning more and more about inherited trauma. Like, your trauma that happened to a parent or even a grandparent can impact you, and you don't even know why or what happened, but it's there. We had already figured out that in utero, if the mother was stressed and had trauma, that was going to impact the kid. So now we're like, can even go further back. And we don't even need to go that far back for kids in Worcester. We know that if their parents are struggling, then of course the kids are struggling, right? We know that parents in Worcester are having a hard time of it right now. It's not an easy time to be alive. It's not an easy time to be raising families. And so, no surprise, if a parent's struggling, the kid's probably going to be struggling too. Having worked in child welfare, I know of people that were DCF kids themselves. And then they went on to have another kid, then they went on to have their own kids. And immediately DCF intervened and took custody. And so we kind of know this, like, when were they ever going to learn how to be a good parent if they weren't parented successfully themselves, if we didn't teach them how to parent? Like, they're not, you don't magically get the download when you're about to become a parent. That just doesn't happen. A person with PTSD who becomes a parent may recover traumatic memories as their children age, and this can have a big impact on kids. those of you that are parents, you probably know this. Like, you didn't even remember that bad thing that happened to you when you were 8 years old. But then when your child is 8 years old, those memories resurface. And it's really hard. It's really difficult. A lot of parents struggle with that. Many of the families we're working with are living in chaotic environments themselves. And that leads us to know that our role is to make the generous assumption. Has anybody ever heard of that? The generous assumption? The generous assumption is a Brene Brown concept. And the generous assumption is people are doing the best they can. That whatever you're seeing, whatever's going on, they're really doing the best they can. If they knew better, if they could do better, they would be doing better. And so I always remember this with adults and children. If I don't like the way they're acting or the way they're behaving, I recognize there's probably a reason for it, and they really are doing the best they can. We're doing the best we can too, and that's important to know. As we've kind of already talked about, this big idea in mental health, if you ever were a social worker, if you looked at the DSM, every single diagnostic thing uses this phrase in it: within normal range. Great. What does that mean? Right? And so so we put that here as like this idea, we measure things up against normal, and normal is not a thing. There's like no such thing as normal. Whatever happened for you and your family is your normal, right? And when I taught mental health at Worcester State for like 20 years, and I would always get some really interesting stories from people about something that they thought was normal. And then they went to their friend's house and they were like, oh, that did not go over well. That was not what everybody does. Right? So this is one of those kinds of things that you learn the hard way, like, oh, not all families do this thing that my family does. And it's important to know that when you're working with the families you're working with, the way things happen, kids only know what they know. They only have been exposed to what they've been exposed to. Norms are personal, norms are social, norms are cultural. Many of us are working with people from other cultural social groups, and they're not growing up the same way we grew up. It's different. One of the other challenging things about norms are they're usually invisible. You can't really see that, and they're indisputable. I remember when she was alive, I used to have arguments with my grandmother all the time about what was normal and what wasn't. She was always like so certain, like, that's not normal. And I'm like, where's this? How do you know? Where's the book on normal? It doesn't exist. It's not, it's very subjective, very personal. Norms can be comforting. Sometimes it's great to feel like, oh, I'm normal. And how we talk about trauma is like, this is a normal reaction to something that happened, right? It's predictable. It follows the textbooks. So sometimes that can be comforting to know that you're normal. Norms can be comforting, damaging, and anything in between. Norms impact our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. They set our baseline, and they're a myth. Garber Mate, who's a big leader in the field of trauma, just wrote a book called The Myth of Normal to really hammer down on this idea that there's not a normal thing. I put this fish in the fishbowl picture here too, because the invisibility of normal, it's the water we're swimming in, and we don't always see it. We don't question it. We don't think about it. We just go along with it. There's plenty of things in our culture that we think are normal that really aren't in other cultures. This culture and race and experience and gender and DNA and education and age and income and stats, millions of different kinds of normal. Children in crisis often feel shameful, bad, or broken. They may still be in fight, flight, freeze. They may have been taught by their experience that they cannot trust adults. They often, when they're in crisis themselves, have very little confidence. They're overwhelmed. They don't think very well of themselves. And it's very easy to re-victimize kids that are already struggling. That's sort of an important thing to notice. The kids that are really struggling are the ones that need our special care as much as possible. Those are the ones that continue to have bad experiences when they don't have adults looking out for them and shepherding their best life experiences. What they need more than anything else is kindness. I know that everyone here already does that and knows that. Just putting it out there how important it is to treat them with kindness and understanding. I love this one too, this sort of garden analogy. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower, right? But we don't think about kids that way. We're like, what's wrong with you, kid? Like, we would not do that to the flower. Like, flower, what's wrong with you? You're not growing the way we want you to. We would say, like, oh, are you not getting enough light? Oh, maybe you need more water. You need more space. We'd think about fixing the conditions. But yet with kids, for some reason, we just blame those kids and we don't think about what are the conditions going on around. Can we change something in the conditions? Because if we do, we'll probably get a different outcome. Trauma is like a skip in a record. And I know that even though records haven't been around for a long time since my childhood, even the younger people know what a skip in the record's all about, right? Yeah. If you had a record and you got a skip in it, and you knew, and I remember this so well from childhood, you knew the skip was in the record and you knew when it was coming up, you had to jump up and run over to the record player and pick up the needle and physically move it way around the skip, right? If it was too close, it would sink right back into that skip. And when it's in the skip, it's got the lyric on repeat, right? We're going to party like it's 1999, 99, 99, 99. That's how trauma works. It creates like this skip hole in your brain that is ruminating and stuck on that thing. And it knows about that skip hole. So a lot of times it works really hard to avoid anything near that skip hole, right? Trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder is about one extreme or the other. You're either always thinking about the horrible thing, you can't stop thinking about it, or you're working really hard to distract yourself with other things and you're not going to go anywhere near the bad thing. I was just working with a group of people, of refugees, and they were talking about trauma, like soldiers and military and war. And people were saying things like, I can't even go near any, if there's going to be any fight scenes or war scenes in a movie, I can't watch it. I got to avoid, if I see military fatigues, that gives me a trauma response. So they were really like, this resonated for them. They recognized that if you're in the stimulus, you're stuck, or you're really working hard to stay away. Too much or too little. When you've had trauma, you don't get a freely chosen relationship with whatever the thing is. Whenever I have people that had alcoholic parents, an alcoholic parent, I'm pretty confident that either they themselves are struggling with addiction or they don't even touch the stuff. They can't go near it. They don't get to have a freely chose, I have a beer when I feel like it. They didn't get that. They were robbed of that because of the trauma of addiction. They recognize that I either can't go near this stuff or they give in and they succumb to it and they're all in. Defense mechanism, our brain is really an incredible thing. Like, it is set up to keep us safe and happy and healthy. So the defense mechanisms will do incredible things to keep us from dealing with the painful thing that we're trying not to deal with. You might even be surprised to see some of the things that people do to not have to deal with something really stressful that's going to remind them of traumatic content. When we're talking, all of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder relate to the traumatic thing. I can usually figure out what the content is. I had somebody said this to me, oh, I see how this works. I have a friend who has Lyme disease, and no matter what's going on, she brings it back to Lyme disease. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like trauma, right? Like that is how it works. People just keep going back to the traumatic content. And we see this at all levels, the personal level, interpersonal level, groups, and our entire society. If we think of racism as trauma, and I do, we can see our whole culture, people in power are white people. And so they have decided they want the avoidance route of trauma. They have outlawed even talking about race and racism. You're not even allowed to talk about sex and sexuality. That's a trauma response, right? Usually people of color, for example, with racism, don't usually get to pick the we're not even going to talk about it response. But we see once you kind of have the trauma lens and see how trauma works, you really see it play out all over the place. You can really understand people. This work, like people's behavior makes so much more sense to me than it did before I understood this. Like now I can be like, oh, that's what's going on. That's what's happening. Often symptoms of childhood abuse and childhood trauma show up in adulthood when people are out of danger. That's one of the big challenges of this stuff. I remember sort of hitting 18, 19, 20 and feeling like, phew, I got out of that. I'm fine now. I'm out of that messed up household. Here I am. But I didn't do the work. I didn't deal with that stuff. And then I had to, because I could see the ways I was impacted when I was trying to have healthy relationships, when I was trying to do good in jobs, all of those things. That childhood trauma shows back up, right? The symptoms were effective in coping while the trauma was there, but when the trauma is gone, you're still doing those things. And a lot of times they're not all that helpful. Things may include guilt, shame, blaming yourself, withdrawing from others, and stressed out at baseline. I worked at the Department of Mental Health, and stressed out at baseline was one of the biggest things I saw. Like people already had such a high stress burden that one legitimately stressful thing, like getting your phone shut off, stressful for anybody. But if you really had a high if you already were stressed out, your phone being shut off, like could land people in the hospital. Kelsey, did you want to jump in?
No, I was doing the hand motions with right along with you, because just, that situation, we've been there, whether it's with ourselves, with the people we work with adults, with our community members, our family, whether it's the kids we work with, where it's like, it seems something small, like that iceberg again, something small is what we see. The phone gets shut off, but everything underneath the surface, we're not seeing it. But once we can start to put those pieces together, suddenly that blown up reaction, that over exaggerated reaction makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. It is really great to sort of be doing this stuff and doing this work and doing this training. Because when I started in the field, I started like right out of high school, and I worked in residential treatment center. The training literally was watch Marcy. She's good. Like, and Marcy was good. Like, thank you. But I had no idea, like, no training with kids with really, really major mental illness. And I have a lot of shame even for the things I didn't understand about those kids when I was working with them. Not my fault. I didn't have any, I did the best I could with what I knew. Generous assumption towards myself. But still, wow, yucky. But the one thing that has endured, this poster was in our break room in residential treatment. And honestly, this poster was such a grounding for me in this work. I'm going to read you the poem. It's called Children Learn What They Live. If a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with hostility, he learns to fight. If a child lives with ridicule, he learns to be shy. If a child lives with shame, he learns to feel guilty. If a child lives with tolerance, he learns to be patient. If a child lives with encouragement, he learns confidence. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. If a child lives with fairness, he learns justice. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith. Love that, right? It helped. It was so clear to me why it was so important that how we treated the kids, because we were setting them up for how they viewed adults, how they viewed themselves, sort of that lifelong stuff. That's why the work you're doing is so, so important. And we're so grateful you're doing it. We're grateful the United Way is supporting it, because there's nothing really more important. There really isn't. Yeah, that's enough about that. Building resilience. One of the big challenges in this work and in this field is kids are having lots of challenging situations in their homes, in their household, and we really can't do too much about that, honestly. That was the challenge, like in so many settings, you could do great things with the kids, but then if you're sending them home to a household that's really challenging and dysfunctional, you feel like, what am I doing here? Yikes, right? Um, and this is the public health model. And the public health model really helped me feel better about sort of working with kids that are in bad situations, even when I can't control it. The idea of the public health model is that there are risk factors and protective factors. And this used to be an activity I did. I taught drugs and society at Worcester State also. And I would ask people, I don't care whether you used drugs or did not use drugs, but what were the things that influenced your decision? Right. And so people would tell me, like, I had an older brother who was using. I was on a sports team and we weren't allowed to. My coach was doing this and that. And what I would get would be the list of risk factors and protective factors, right? Risk factors are things like the ACE things, single parent household, abuse, addiction, poverty, not being able, all of those things are risk factors. But we also know that on the other side of that, there are some things that are going to guarantee better outcomes, that are going to undo some of the challenges and the risks. Those are our protective factors, right? And you guys are the protective factor. Having at least one caring adult outside of your family is the most protective factor there is for kids, right? So kids going through hard stuff can endure hard stuff when we put some good stuff on the other side. When there's people that care about them, that they can talk to, that they trust, that undoes some of the harm the risk factors are doing. So that's how we can be like, we don't have control over these risk factors, but we have control here. And it really makes a difference. Ways we can build resilience and help kids bounce back from bad things that are happening to them. And that's all we mean by resilience. Resilience has gotten to be kind of an overused word these days, and people can feel a little bit triggered by that, because we want kids to be resilient, but we wish they didn't have to be resilient, right? And so this idea of like kids are resilient is sometimes used as like an excuse for why it's okay that they're going through bad things. We're not on that camp, but we want to do the things that make it more likely you're going to bounce back from adversity. And so the things that are going to help kids get through hard stuff are the same for us too, for adults. Anything we do to decrease their stress is awesome. It's a protective factor, right? So just even thinking about what are some of the things that are causing a lot of stress and how can we impact that? Easy enough. If kids are super stressed about their homework, taking a little time to do their homework with them is going to decrease their stress level. Anytime the other image on this slide is probably everybody knows this one, the hierarchy of needs, right? The idea of the hierarchy of needs is that some things are foundational, right? We have on the bottom of the pyramid our physiological needs: food, water, sleep. Those are things our body needs to function healthy. From that, we need safety. We need a safe home, right? A place where we feel like we can be ourselves. Love and belonging really adds to our lives. Esteem, even more. Self-actualized, like living your best life, doing all the things. That's all great. The idea of this chart is we're not going to be super worried about your self-esteem if you don't have stable housing. It's just not. We need to make sure these bottom needs are met before we come to these higher needs. And so this just reminds us, like, start with the basics, right? And I know many of the youth serving programs are great at this. You've already figured this out. Our basic needs of sleep, food, warmth. I know, like the Boys and Girls Club, they feed kids, right? Many of your programs are gonna, we know that kids aren't always eating at home, but if we can give them something to eat while they're with us, that's really gonna help them cope. Sleep to me is, I think I have it on more than one slide, is one of the most underestimated huge pieces of this puzzle. I know for me, like as an adult, something that is mildly irritating to me on a day that I haven't had enough sleep or that I'm overtired, I'm going to cry like I'm a puddle. It's going to hit me so much harder than if I'm well rested. And that's the kids too, right? There's that super funny meme that I love. It's two kids, a brother and a sister, and the little girl is crying. And the brother's like, "Did you have a nap today?" She's like, "No." He's like, "You really need one," right? It's always obvious to us in kids, but that's us too. I mean, it is obvious. If they are overtired, they're not going to achieve much. Like, they're not going to learn a new thing. So whenever possible, making sure that there's space for us to meet kids' basic needs. Maybe there's a quiet corner they can go get a little rest if they're not able to get it at home, if they're coming in tired. Snacks, all the things. Just, I know most of the youth serving sites in Worcester now really do this and make sure they have access to be able to give kids whatever they might need, just to meet their basic needs. So decreasing stress, hitting all those basic needs. The other thing for kids especially, structure and routine equals safety. This one, I'm bad at this myself. I can't lie. I did not grow up with structure and routine, and I am not good at implementing it for myself. Yet in classroom environments, in after school, this is going to help so much. When kids have had trauma, they're constantly scanning for threats. They're really worried all the time. And so when things are predictable and happen on schedule, they get to relax. If they know at noon every single day, we always eat lunch at noon.
Yeah.
Structure and routine. Go ahead,
I'm
Kels.
going to jump in here. We've got a lot of directors in the room with us today. And so for those watching, I hope you have other roles too, but speaking to the audience we've got here, directors have a role in creating this safety by creating it for their staff and their teams. They get to model it, right? And help their teams problem solve to create structure and routine for their days, for their kids, for those programs, right? And so really when we think about structure and routine, it's not just what's best for the kids, it's how to help regulate your adults too, your staff. And we can really see that as a hierarchy there of needing structure and routine through all levels within the organization to really have the best outcomes for everyone. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Mindfulness is another thing that's really useful, has a great evidence base. And mindfulness can sound very airy-fairy kind of thing, but what we really mean is just being in the present moment. I know for me, when I had a lot of stuff going on, I had to develop the mantra of nothing bad is happening right now. I had to keep saying that to myself. Nothing bad is happening right now. And that is your environments. These kids might be worried about a lot of things, but right now they're here at the club with their friends. They're in the LEI program. They're getting to do this. And so bringing them back to the present, because when you've had a lot of stress and trauma, your brain is overactive thinking about that stuff. So that sort of like right now, be in this moment, helping ourselves, our kids, our coworkers to be in the here and now really helps the distraction of all the stressors that they're worrying about. Be here now. When you have had a lot of trauma, it feels like everything is like it feels scary in the moment. Even when you're safe, you can need that kind of a mantra like it's okay right now, right? That helps reduce that sense of danger for kids, like especially in the sort of 2025 of the ice raid world. Like there's probably a lot of hypervigilant kids that are super worried about what's going on, and anything we can do to be like, okay, right now you're safe. Everything's okay right now. Even an hour of safety helps, right? In when you're feeling scared and unsafe. And feeling seen and cared about, huge protective factor, makes a gigantic difference. If kids aren't saying this to you, they will when they're adults. Like I have definitely had people I worked with as kids come back as adults and tell me like, you were nice to me. Like I appreciated how kind you were. Or like, and they looked me up later. Like, and I know that for myself too. When I'm not at my best and when I'm doing badly, people that were kind to me when I felt like I didn't deserve it or when I couldn't reciprocate, like that stays in my mind as like an amazing person, like that I would want to reach back out to, right? Because they're not going to be, they don't always feel like you don't always know in the moment how important it is. It's so important. It's also important as you're doing work in the summer to know your scope, right? Um, sometimes I have occasionally struggled with the knowing my scope of sort of wanting to do so much more than I could do, or than I was able, when I had the resources to do, than I had the role to do. So that can be something important in your organization, is to just know like, here's what we do. We don't do this. We can make referrals for that, but that's not what we don't need to be everything to all the kids. Even though we might want to be, our role dictates that we can only do this, or this is the part we're doing. And that's important for our own well-being to know and let people know what we can and what we can't do, what the boundaries are. Doing this work, it's also important to know yourself and know if there's something that triggers you or if there's a kid that triggers you. I definitely at times have had one or two kids that really I didn't bond with, that got under my skin. And then I had to sort of that's not fair to those kids. So I figured out either a way to have a different relationship with those kids, or made sure those kids were working with people that love their guts, right? Like sort of making that shift to know what you're good at doing and what you're not good at doing. Agency policy might have some rules around things, ways you can interact with kids and ways you can't. And those are going to be important to know. If a specific response is mandated, tell the person. In social work, we have what's called the lamb warning, and social workers in general keep your confidence. Whatever you say to them, so whatever Kelsey tells me is between me and Kelsey. I'm not telling anybody else unless I think that Kelsey's a danger to herself or someone else. That's what the lamb warning is I'm going to keep everything you say between you and me unless I learn something about somebody being hurt, right? And this might be something that does come up in your settings. You might hear from kids that they're being hurt or being abused or that something bad is happening. And at that point, you can't keep that to yourself. You have to act. So whenever possible, letting kids know, like, what you, if you tell me something or I find out you've been hurt, I am going to have to tell I'm going to have to tell my supervisor. I'm going to have to take that somewhere else. That has happened to me before. And I feel like I've saved my rapport because I've been honest about, I have to tell in this situation. And as long as you're honest and clear, usually that will be okay. And you want to maintain especially in the situation of any sort of abuse, your relationship with that kid is incredibly important. So you don't want them to feel like you don't ever want them to feel like they told you something between you and them and then you told somebody else and they got caught by surprise by that. Let them know. And that usually is the only thing that you have to, if they're telling you about a crush they have, you don't need to tell anybody else that. If they're telling you about something bad that's happening, if that crush they have is 15 years older than them, well, yeah, then that is something that you need to do something with, and just being clear with that. If something comes up and you're not up for helping them, if it's triggering for you, if it's not, if it's something you just aren't able to do, no worries. We want you to take care of yourself too. You need to be your best self to do this work. So don't blame yourself if you can't help every kid, but connect them with somebody else who can do that, right? Just making sure that they have their needs met at the same time as we're meeting our needs. We can rarely affect the circumstances people are in, but we can help them learn tools to cope. And just being in their lives helps them cope. A helping relationship is, as I've said before, I'm glad I'm saying it again, is a protective factor. It really helps more than anything else. Dr. Bruce Perry, the more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely they will be able to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change. The most powerful therapy is human love, right? So this unconditional positive regard, does anybody know what that means? What's unconditional positive regard? Jump right in. I'm like, Nathaniel's going to do it. He's always got me.
Accept the person the way they are. Exactly.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bernadette. That's exactly what we mean by that, right? The idea that even when I did something I'm embarrassed about, even though I hit a kid at recess and I'm in trouble, you don't suddenly hate me. You still care about me, even though I had a bad behavior, right? That's unconditional positive regard. It's not, and so many of us probably as kids got conditional regard, right? We care about you when you're doing well in school, when you're getting good grades, when you're being nice to other kids. That's when we care about you. And if you do it wrong, we don't care about you. That is not the message we want our kids to have. Of course, kids understand that you didn't like that behavior they had. You had to address that behavior, but you still like them. That's what they need to know, right? So sort of making that distinction, because kids can really catastrophize if they feel like they have lost that relationship with you. Like that can really set them up to like even be suicidal. Like it's so important that you're clear with them that I still care about you, even though even though you did that one bad thing. I've done bad things, and I'm so glad people still care about me. We don't want you to do that thing. We're not saying that's okay, but we still care about you. You're still what we still care. That builds their resilience. You are offering so many good, healthy models of adult interactions. This is helping the kids enormously to be treated with kindness and caring, to see how you treat other adults, to see how you treat them, encourages healing, and is more effective than anything else. I have this Carl Rogers quote here because it's really easy to forget about sort of what happens when people feel judged or criticized. The quote is, "When you criticize me, I intuitively dig in to defend myself. However, when you accept me like I am, I suddenly am willing to change." Right? I remember that too, because pretty much without exception, even when you're delivering constructive, helpful criticism, it's our natural instinct to get defensive. That's what we all do. So don't be surprised when kids get defensive. It's instinct, it's natural. But when we do give them that positive regard that's not conditional, they want to do better. And that's huge. In factors of a helping relationship, the non-judgmental attitude, huge. Believing that the kids can do better, that they can do well, that you see them as more than a bad day, that you care about their feelings. You give quality attention and let them know that their feelings matter. You were upset by that? Let's talk about it. Or why don't coaching them to help them express themselves. You get to be genuine and authentic in how you interact with kids. That they see through fake. There's no being, it's really hard to be fake with kids. They don't fall for it. They get it. And that's what I love about working with kids. It's like I'm not wondering how they feel or what they think. They're pretty honest, right? And they're genuine and authentic too. When we accurately communicate empathy, it's so helpful for them. And then this idea of the shame backpack. When you've experienced trauma, no matter what, no matter when, it comes with shame. Shame is like the cereal box prize. You didn't want that prize. You just wanted your Cocoa Pebbles. You didn't need that Lego toy, but there it is. Shame is that thing you did not want and you did not look for, but it's always there. It makes even like I've worked with like toddlers that were abused by adults and they blame themselves and feel ashamed, like it's something they did wrong. I will say I never miss an opportunity to tell kids cannot control adults. They just can't. Even it's shocking how much they believe it's their fault. When a 4-year-old believing if I didn't take that present that Uncle Bill gave me, then this wouldn't have happened. That's not the truth. So we always want to let kids know adults are responsible for adult behavior. You are not responsible for adults. And recognizing that shame is what's going on for kids can really be helpful in knowing how to help and support them. Ron Waddell over at Legendary Legacies sent me this meme that's at the top of the page, and I thought it was so touching that he sent it to me that I'm using it in my PowerPoints. But I think he sent it because it really resonated for him. Perhaps if tearful little boys were comforted instead of shamed, there wouldn't be so many angry men struggling to empathize with emotions, right? Our responses to kids' feelings are teaching them about what to expect from people and teaching them about their feelings. So making sure we are empathetic and giving them the support they need is so important. And then we have this Brene Brown quote. This is probably our favorite, right, Kels? This is such a good one.
Such a good one.
Because it reminds us of the factors. So Brene says, if you put shame in a petri dish, it needs 3 things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. I love that one because secrecy, silence, and judgment are like the usual conditions. We don't want that. So often when something bad happens to a kid, they're told like, just stop talking about that. Don't tell anybody, right? You shouldn't. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. And then that makes it so much worse, right? So recognizing, nope, we're not doing secrecy, silence, or judgment. My little emphasis thing. On the note of sort of secrecy and shame and all of that stuff, hopefully this doesn't come up, but I feel like it's really important to put in here because if it does come up, it's super important how you handle it. Responding to a disclosure. If a kid tells you something that leads you to believe that they are being harmed, that's what I mean by a disclosure. If they're talking about, my dad hit me, my mom locked me in my room all day, something like that. And studies show when you tell somebody the bad thing that happened, the reaction you get from the person you told is the number one most important factor in how well you will recover. That's why the work you're doing is so incredibly important. If a kid comes to you with something and you handle that appropriately and effectively, amazing. That is going to really help that kid lifelong. That is going to really be healing. If you handle it poorly, it can mean bad outcomes for kids. So that's why it's important to get it right. The most important thing to do is to believe them. Believe them. Survivors are often not believed or worse, blamed for their victimization. You may even have experienced that yourself when you tell the bad thing that's happened. People are like, no, that didn't happen. No, they wouldn't. This wonderful person wouldn't do that bad thing to you. Nope, we're believing kids. We're believing whatever they tell us happened, we believe them. If it's something that calls for medical attention or medical help, if that's needed, help them get medical attention or help. If they say no, respect that. We want to give kids as much feelings of control in this as possible. So if they say, no, 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 I don't need to go to the hospital. No, I don't need to. We're going to say, okay, I'm going to respect that. Let them lead the conversation. Ask how to help instead of asking for specific details, right? If a kid tells us something, it's not our job to be the investigator. It might be our job to contact somebody who's going to investigate, but we're not the investigator. Our only job is to help the kid feel seen and heard and cared about. That's the most important thing. And then everything else we do from there is gravy. If we get them help, great. Be reassuring. Let them know what happened was not their fault. Kids cannot control adults. Offer encouragement before advice. Survivors of violence are often bombarded with opinions from peers, family, friends, or professionals. We're not here to give them advice. We're just here to support them. And get support for yourself. No matter what your position and expertise, some burdens should not be borne alone, right? If you're the one who's been told that they're being abused by their stepdad, you're going to believe them. You're going to get them help. You're going to contact a supervisor, even if you are the supervisor, making sure you're not the only one bearing that. And then your agency, your organization might have more policy about how to respond. But if you're the person they tell, that is a huge gift. Like that says everything about the kind of person you are, the relationship you have with them, and don't freak out, right? Like honor that relationship by supporting that kid and helping them get safe if you can, but just letting them know that you care, that it wasn't their fault. Kids can't control adults. Really, really helpful. And does that make sense? Again, this is hopefully this doesn't come up for people, but because it could come up and it's so important to handle it the right way, I got it here. Probably some of you have had people
A-
make disclosures.
Amy, and I'm just gonna put a little note here. The photo you have here with the colors and the dog is bringing me so much calm, and this is difficult stuff, right? And so what I keep doing is popping over to the picture, taking a breath, letting it out. Okay, on to the next point. This is what I'm gonna do, right? And it's helping me to regulate my nervous system and my emotional state so that I can appropriately absorb the information and content. And I'm sharing that in case anyone else was feeling like, oh, this is a lot, right? You got that
Thank-
little dog there. Take a breath, right?
It is a lot. It's really
yeah.
heavy stuff, and it really could come up for you because we know kids are going through hard stuff. Kids are going through bad stuff. There are lots of kids that are experiencing
Yep.
abuse.
And you
And
want to get it right. But at the same time, there's an urgency and it's right in front of you, and your stress, your body's having those stress responses. And so that's putting you into action. And well, what can I do? How can I bring myself down a little bit, stay calm, and really use all of these tools and principles to act in the best way possible, right?
Kelsey and
And
Amy, if I can interrupt for a minute.
yeah, go ahead.
I'll just add in that if you are working at an agency where for whatever reason you don't feel the support of your supervisor or administrator or something like that with this content, please reach out to Amy, to Kelsey, to me, anybody at the United Way. I think we would be happy to support you and get you the resources that maybe would help that child. Well, I'm losing lights, sorry. But obviously confidentially. And so if there is a situation where you need support, please let us know. We also have a lot of support from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So I've had agencies say, I don't really know how to talk about X topic with this group of youth. And been able to receive a lot of resources. So there are different ways if you don't feel like your agency may have that support. And Teresa, yes.
So to that point, Echo, I mean, I'm assuming most people either on this call or where we work are filled with mandated reporters. So the last part of what you said, I'm not sure that jives with the way the laws are written around how youth are supported and what mandated reporters do.
Right.
And I just wonder if, Amy, can you touch upon those pieces and specifically what they cover? Because if you tell a mandated reporter, there's no question about what should happen, right?
right.
Oh, Amy, you're muted.
Sorry, I muted myself. Teresa, you're totally right. Everybody should have a policy about this at their agency. Usually it's a DCF call. Most people doing direct services probably wouldn't be the one who does that. It would go higher up. That's how things are supposed to be. But we also know that things aren't always as they're supposed to be. So to Echo's point, if it isn't clear in your agency, if the structure isn't there, if you feel nervous or you need extra support, we want to do that. We want to give you that support. I'm sure at Girl Scouts, it's real. You have a clear policy and everybody knows what to do, right?
Yeah, I worked at the Y for a while. I worked at Children's Literacy Organization. I mean, this was really clear to all staff, and there was a ton of training on it. That's just why I'm bringing it up, is that really nobody who ever worked there didn't know what their role was in terms of a child saying something. And frontline staff were part of it. I mean, they are often the ones a kid will mention, oh my God, I don't tell my father this, he's gonna hit me again, or whatever. That's who gets it, right? It's usually not a director or somebody at a higher level. So I guess maybe in some organizations it's looser, but I'm hoping they have to prove they have these policies in place in order to get licensed, so.
And hopefully, I hope you're right too, that everybody's like, oh yeah, we know this policy, we know how to do this. This is always, but I also have worked in environments where it wasn't clear. It wasn't, they didn't quite know what to do, or they weren't dealing with it correctly. They should be, but there's a
I
lot of,
I
go
think
ahead.
it's hard for me sometimes because I deal with a lot of college students and high school students, and their judgment is very different than mine and what they see and how they express it. And what I'm learning from this is probably some of their own drama that they're placing upon it. So, yes, we all are direct reporters, and I tell them that they have to, but they need to rethink about what they're doing too. That's the hard part to teach them or help them through it.
Yeah, really good point too, Bernadette, about people bringing their own. It's near impossible to not bring your own trauma to the work you're doing. And it's also near impossible to see your own trauma. That's what keeps us in business, right? Like people can't see their own stuff, so they don't even realize that their reaction is much more about them than about the kid. And hopefully people have good supervision and they feel like people at your site running the place have the good judgment and can help and support. But we can't always be sure of that. These are and this is the spot where it gets the stickiest, right? So important to just talk about it and know about it. If you're at a site and you're not sure what the policy is, like please raise this. Please kind of, hey, what do we do if this happens? It's so much better to be prepared in advance before it comes up than to have it come up and be shocked and taken. It like I've heard people disclose before too, and it's really hard not to be reactive, not to freak out yourself. And as Kelsey said, like keeping calm. It feels like this urgent thing, and it's important, but it's probably like been going on for a while. This probably isn't the first, like it doesn't need to be addressed in this second. It needs to be addressed planfully and strategically and calmly more than quickly. So taking the time to get it right it's important to do, like get this kid help, do something. But we want to do it right so that we don't do more harm. And I don't worry that people won't believe kids, but that's often what happens to kids when they tell people other than youth workers, other than people in this field, people don't know what to do, and it makes things worse.
Especially when adults have relationships with other adults, right? And so if the kid is disclosing to an adult something about, a parent, a caregiver, whoever it is, that the person they're disclosing to probably already has a relationship with that adult. Well, I can't see them doing that. I don't think
would
that.
never do
This,
that.
this, sometimes they exaggerate, or we know they put in a report last year and nothing came of it. And right, there's all this kind of gray area, and these kind of examples coming from things experiences I've seen and or been on the sidelines of, and all of that. And there's a little more gray than any of us would like, right? And the policies really should be black and white. And so that's really where we're coming from in terms of offering some additional support. If something just is sitting with you a little funky, feel free to reach out. Yeah. Great.
Thanks. I'm glad we spent time here because this really is kind of one of the more important pieces of working with kids, knowing what to do. Managing behavior. When I was in residential treatment, for a while I had the title of behavior manager. I know, shocking. But really, who knew? It's genuinely so easy. I did not get it, but it's so easy. Attention is the skill of managing behavior. Attention is a basic human need. one of my triggers was something that makes me crazy is when people say like, so-and-so is just doing that for attention. I'm like, well, then give them attention. Attention is a basic human. Babies die without attention. Attention is a human failure to thrive is babies that did not get the attention they needed. Like basic human need. All kids are looking for attention because it's a basic human need. All of us, even as adults, we would prefer positive attention the most, but negative attention is better than no attention. Right? Positive and negative and no. And one thing that kids know how to get negative attention. They could like you flip a table and you're getting a room full of adults here. You are immediately getting tons of attention. And that's not what we want, right? And that's not what we want because we reinforced hugely the negative attention. When I see people that are struggling with behaviors in a classroom, usually this is where they went wrong. They are paying way more attention to the bad behaviors than the good ones. They're paying a lot of attention to the kids that aren't doing what they want and little to no attention to the kids that are doing what they want. This is what I did as behavior manager. What I literally would do would come into the room and say, Kelsey, you're doing such a good job. You're on task. You're focused. You're doing everything. You've got a smile on your face. You're getting your work done. That is awesome. And meanwhile, if Echo is not doing that, I am showing her, if you want my attention, do what Kelsey's doing. That's how you're going to get my attention. You can't even believe how easy this works and how 100% of the time it works. So often, though, kids have no idea how to get positive attention. They're not sure. They don't see it being given out. They don't know what to do to get it. They need attention, so they turn to negative. If I act out, somebody will call me on it right away. They're going to pay attention to me, right? Using that is how you manage behaviors, right? Whatever you put your attention on, you give power to. Paying attention to someone is one of the best things you can do, and it's free. When in residential treatment, kids used to get to earn time with people one-on-one. They got to earn attention, basically, positive attention. The things that you ignore will go away with the caveat of the extinction burst. That's a pretty important caveat. If Kelsey's doing a behavior, if she's tapping her feet, and it's an annoying behavior, and I just ignore it, she's probably going to amp it up a little higher to see where I'm going to pay attention. This is like, you can view this in the grocery store all the time, right? Like I made the mistake one time. In the grocery store, they put all the candy bars eye level to a kid sitting in the cart at the checkout, right? So the kid's sitting there looking at the candy and I want a candy bar. Nope, you can't have a candy bar. I want a candy bar. No, I said no. I want a candy bar. Fine, here's the candy bar, right? What I just taught my kid was you have to act out at this level to get what you want. Like I made that mistake once, and then I did have to repair that mistake like the next 3 grocery store trips, right? And that's what's going to happen. Like I had done pretty good at being consistent. If I say no, I mean no, I'm not wavering. Then I gave in that one time, and I needed 3 times after that to fix it again. But being aware of that, when the kid will amp up their bad behavior before they stop their bad behavior. They'll stop it though if it's not getting what they want. And what they're looking for is almost without exception attention. If it doesn't get attention, they're going to keep on going, and then they're going to be like, oh, this isn't working, and they'll stop. But you have to be able to ride out the extinction burst. So that's important. That's going to be sort of your judgment. A lot of times, if this was happening, if one kid was really having a problem, the work would be either giving all those other kids lots of positive rewards for not getting sucked into the bad behavior, or getting those kids away so that I could not pay it. I could ignore that one kid who is escalating and be able to keep that kid safe and keep the other kids safe. Keeping the kids safe is your number one job, right? That's always what we're going to do. So if somebody's has a behavior that's dangerous, you're going to have to attend to that. But a lot of nuisance behavior, ignore that. It'll go away. Reward the good stuff, especially the kids in residential treatment. I had to be like pretty obvious about the good stuff, about really putting over the top the attention for the kids that were doing good. But it always worked. They always figured it out, and they immediately, it is even comical, like the kids up in the closet doing stuff, and then, oh, this kid's in their seat, and this kid's in their seat, and this kid, and then they figure it out, and they pretty quickly go to their seat. I promise you this stuff, it literally is science. It works. So making sure that you know that and use that tool in your toolbox. And making sure that you're taking good care of yourself too. When you're managing kids that have a lot of behaviors that can be challenging, self-care is super important. Kels, this is Kelsey's part right here.
I'm in. Thanks, Amy. Talking about tools and strategies in our toolboxes, right? Amy said our attention's our top tool when working with kids and youth. And we've alluded to this topic of regulation and self-regulation, calming ourselves down already earlier. But I want to give it just a little bit more attention. Self-regulation really is the ability to understand and manage your own behaviors and reactions, as well as being able to manage your emotions, especially during difficult situations and challenging times, right? It's it's a lot easier to manage our emotions when things are going good, when we feel good, when we're happy, when there's not a lot of stress. We want to have those same feelings, and okay, I'm still happy. There's more stress, okay, but I can kind of stay here in my comfort zone. I'm not going to either extreme where I'm shutting down or I'm getting really upset and angry. Some of the benefits of managing and doing some of the self-regulation, they really do promote it does promote better health for us, right? It reduces all the risks for, diabetes, heart conditions, high cholesterol, all those things that are really associated with higher levels of stress. And so self-regulation is one of those tools that when we can stay in that healthy range, we're having less stress, it's contributing to better health for us. And it also helps us to have thoughtful and calm responses, right? And so this is just the reminder that that's where we want to be. Recently, I heard a child care provider say, I just feel like I yell at kids all day long. All right, well, we're coming back to this slide because that's not where we want you to be, right? That's not your job. No one's paying you for that. It's not who you want to be. It's not who the kids want. It's not none of it. So what do we need to do to help you get regulated? We're going to go to the next slide, Amy. One of the benefits in direct service work is of a regulated adult really is the co-regulation, right? So when I heard that example of, I just yell at kids all day, you're not regulated as the adult and the kids aren't regulated, right? And so there's the relationship there that we can really nurture, right? With a little more reflection, recognition of the challenge, reflection, some reframing, and then some really thoughtful responses, right? So those are some keywords there. If you're struggling with self-regulation and co-regulation, the little 4 R's may help you process that. Okay, I've recognized it. Next step, reflect. What would I like this to look like? How could this look different? What could I do differently? And then reframing that. Maybe an apology, maybe, oh, this isn't as bad as I realized. Like Amy said, nothing bad is happening right now. I have another favorite there. I'm safe, I'm at peace, I'm exactly where I need to be. That one really centers me when there's so many things and it's all urgent and right now I am here, I am safe, I'm at peace, I'm exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I need to be doing, right? Because sometimes the to-do list can dysregulate us and take us off of our calm and even pathway. So just thinking about why co-regulation is important here, It's when one nervous system calms another. And so in this case, we're talking about adults and the relationship with children and youth. So it happens when a caregiver who's attuned to the child, they can use their body, their tone, their pitch of the voice, their breath to really anchor safety, to calm yourself and to calm that child down, right? That's really what we're talking about. You're the leader, right? Like it or not, the folks in the room with the kids, the adults in the room are the leaders, and they have the responsibility to lean on and really use these tools to regulate the room. Awesome. Go to the next one. Thank you. This one's a favorite, mindful breathing, right? I love this one, the 5-finger breathing, because it's good for adults, it's good for kids, and it can be done in secret. You can do it under your desk and nobody even knows. They just look like you're fiddling with your hands at the grocery store, wherever you are. But this breathing strategies are definitely one of these tools and strategies we're using to help regulate ourselves and the kids, right? So you can see on the diagram here, the 5-finger breathing model is to inhale on the ups, exhale on the downs as you trace your finger, right? We don't have time to give it a try right now, but I think you get the point of it from the picture there, and it's pretty straightforward. If you're finding that you need a minute to do it, feel free to lead whoever's in the room with you in that exercise. I'm going to take a minute to just do a quick breathing activity. You're welcome to join me, right? Because that's really how we build this culture of regulation, and we really teach it. Of course, if you have other breathing techniques, use those, right? Use what works for you. We talked about routines and the safety that routines create. Routines can be thought of as another tool in your toolbox here, right? A self-regulation strategy really is the routine. I know what I need to do. I know what happens next, and I know what happens after that, and I can leave at a safe time every day, right? My job doesn't go on and on and on and on, right? There's safety. There's a lot of safety and security in the routine, and the knowing when the break comes, right? When we get to turn off and not have to have the big responsibility and the weight of all of that, right? Prioritizing your day is one way to make routines work. If you're like, okay, I get a routine, but what am I supposed to do? Like what needs to happen? Start with your priorities. What are the things that you have to do? Usually when you talk to folks doing direct service, they say attendance, they say snack time, or whatever the meal time is. Those are typically the big responsibilities. Also, end of day kind of checkout procedure, who's in the room and who left the room, right? That constant attendance piece. But for folks at the director level, you've got reports to do. You've got maybe some mandated reporting things to take care of, right? And those are outside the routine of a day. So how do you, using your prioritization strategies and tools as one of those things to really ground your day and stay regulated, right? We do have time here quickly at the end to do a 5-minute goal practice. So if you, I'm going to put a 5-minute alarm and you're going to do something you need to do for 5 minutes, right? You get to choose what you're doing, right? It's so easy to say, use a 5-minute goal. You forget to use it until you practice using it, right? And so right now we are building this habit of practicing using it. Pick something you need to do, whether it's an email, a phone call, starting a report, whatever it is, a follow-up with somebody. You've got 5 minutes to do it. I'll see you in 5. I've got the alarm on. All right, we're gonna start coming back. Thank you so much. If you're inclined, I'd love to see in the chat what you did in those 5 minutes and how to feel. Mm. Yeah. Last tool we've got for you today here, as we get ready to wrap up, is how can I hold this lighter, right? And I physically got my hands open and demonstrating what lighter looks like, right? This is hard. This is difficult. I'm really stressed. How can I hold this lighter, right? I'm opening space for possibilities. I'm creating space for alternatives I hadn't thought of before. And so I'm really hoping that the education and all the awareness and the great content that Amy shared today, along with some of the content that I shared around the tools, strategies for success, for how to apply the education and knowledge, will really help you to feel good, and that you have what you need when things are tough so that you can really stay regulated and promote good good mental health in your communities. Right. All right.
Thank you, Kels. Great.
Thank you.
I promise we will end on time, but we're gonna go a little quick at the end here.
Yep.
Principles of trauma-informed environments. This is from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and they have boiled down trauma-informed environments into just a few important points. And so these are things that are sort of more at the, not at the interpersonal, but at the organizational, programmatic level. Making sure that safety, trustworthiness, and transparency are built into your programming. That helps it be trauma informed. Also, peer support. In addition to you being role models for the kids, supporting kids building good relationships with other kids is hugely important and hugely helpful. We often forget, like, it's the, if they're doing something in the summer, the adults are really important, but the peers are almost more important. And anytime we're encouraging happy, healthy peer relationships, that's great for all the kids. Collaboration and mutuality, helping the kids feel like that they're seen and heard. And that shows up in, you ask them, do you want this book or that book? That sort of leads to empowerment, voice, and choice. The more often, especially if kids have experienced trauma, trauma is so much about powerlessness. So feeling like you have a choice is so helpful, even if it's a small choice. I always build choices in even when they're really small. Like, do you want me to use the blue pen to correct your paper or the green pen? And something as small as that. And going with what they chose helps them feel a little bit more power and feel a little bit more heard and cared about. And that creates the kind of environment where kids can armor off. Being tuned into their culture, historical issues, gender issues, recognizing that they're kids, but they have a lot of things that they're worrying about, a lot of things going on, and being sensitive to that, recognizing that. This picture here, this little kid has his armor on, and I like this picture because it's just a reminder that a trauma informed environment is one where kids can take their armor off, where they don't have to feel like they're defending themselves. They get to let it hang out and be themselves and play and enjoy. And that is so, so helpful. We can't do anything about, well, we can try, but ICE raids being a reality for families in our city. But giving them a safe place to not worry for a minute and be a kid helps enormously. Take care of you. This is really meaningful, important work, and that makes it hard too. If you didn't care, it wouldn't be hard, but because you do care, it's just as important for you to be applying these sort of trauma-informed concepts and reducing your stress, attending to your basic needs, being mindful, making sure you're getting the sleep that you need, right? All of those things set you up to enjoy this work. It's really fun and rewarding, but it can also be really stressful. Remembering that hurt people. When you have kids that have experienced so much trauma, if they're acting out, that's not personal. That's a like, I can't control this. This is bigger than me. And so not taking it personally. Also having that kindness and compassion for yourself when you're, we're all just really doing the best we can. And we're humans that have experienced hard things too, that maybe are still experiencing hard things. And so taking that care with yourself and your coworkers. This quote I love, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. This is a reminder, this is the prevention work. The work you're doing is making the Worcester 20 years from now better, right? And boy, do we need that.
Yeah, the Worcester County, Central Mass, all of it. Thanks so much for being here with us today. I've put the link in the chat for some feedback.
Oh yeah, it's 3, so we should go.
We are wrapping up.
Come
Yeah.
back to glimmers. Come back to glimmers. Glimmers, opposite of triggers. Finding something beautiful and joyful. More of the same about the real importance of the work you're doing. We really hope that it comes across how much we value this work. We care about this. It's making a huge difference for our city. And as Kelsey said, oh, the survey is different, right? This isn't the survey. This QR code takes you to the Worcester Acts website. And as we've said in the beginning, we have done deep dive on all kinds of different trauma content that we really hope you'll use. We've done trauma of racism, trauma of poverty, homelessness, immigration status. You name it, we probably have done a session on it. And if you think of something we haven't, please let me know. It's our intent to make these so that they're great for self-help or anything. You can just, if you're working with somebody that's experiencing a specific trauma, you can just send them that one page and that has the content and some other resources. Every topic area has additional resources that go with it. And on behalf of the United Way, we also are going to do a couple office hour drop-in sessions with no agenda, no content, just bring us what's hard for you, what you're working on, what we could support you on. And so anyone working with kids on these programs is welcome to join us during that time. And we'll work with whatever we have. It's a good way to be able to deal with things that we didn't cover, that we didn't know were going to come up for you. But we would love to help you. And Echo will get the details of that out as well. But we've set aside July 22nd and August 14th to be available if anything comes up. And then that is like the just request for some feedback from our funding sources. And I'm gonna, ta-da, I stopped sharing. There we go. Sorry,
Thank you
it's
so much.
I took 2 more minutes. I'm so sorry, you guys. But hopefully that 5 minutes, we're still in good shape. We still are like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, and Echo will share the PowerPoint and the recording. Usually it doesn't take long at all for the recording to come back, but we'll send that right back to you. And again, we are so, so grateful you took the time today on a sort of a holiday week to dive into this stuff with us. I know you're going to have a great summer and do great work, and our kids are so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
all.
much.
Have a good week. Echo, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Take care. Have a good
Bye.
holiday. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Always a pleasure to see you, Kwame. Thank you.